I thought I found a love of my life, but one day I found a note on my pillow. I'm moving on to someone else. My name is Jared King, and this is the story of how I uncovered the lie that destroyed my world and how I took back control. Legally, cunningly, and with unexpected twists and turns. You won't believe what I found on her computer. Jared King had built a life most people only dreamed of. At 32, he was a rising star in Seattle's tech scene, an engineer whose knack for turning ideas into patents had earned him a small fortune. His name was whispered in boardrooms, his designs powering half the security systems in the city's gleaming skyscrapers. But it wasn't the money or the recognition that made him feel alive. It was coming home to Emily. Emily was his anchor, the woman who'd stolen his heart 3 years ago at a tech conference. She was sharp, with a laugh that could light up a room and a way of making even his worst days feel conquerable. They'd married in a whirlwind, their wedding a blur of Puget Sound views and promises to face the world together. To Jared, she was perfect, or so he thought. Lately, though, something felt off. Emily had always been driven, climbing the ranks at her marketing firm with a fire Jared admired. But her late nights had grown frequent, her excuses vaguer. Client dinners, she'd say, or a last-minute pitch. When Jared brought up starting a family, her smile would tighten, her eyes darting away. Not yet, she'd murmur, changing the subject. He brushed it off. Her career mattered, and he trusted her. Didn't he? That Friday, Jared landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport after a week-long trip to San Francisco, troubleshooting a glitch for a big client. His phone buzzed with emails, but none from Emily. Odd, he thought. She usually sent a quick welcome-home text. The cab ride to their Capitol Hill home was quiet, the city's drizzle smearing the windows. He was bone-tired but eager to see her, to sink into their routine of takeout and a movie, her head on his shoulder. The house was dark when he pulled up, no glow from the living room. Jared frowned, key in hand. Emily's car was in the driveway, but the silence felt wrong. No hum of the TV she left on even when she wasn't watching. No clatter from the kitchen where she'd be pouring wine. He called, stepping inside. His voice echoed. He dropped his bag, a knot forming in his chest. The kitchen was empty, counters spotless. The living room, too, no sign of her. Jared's pulse quickened as he climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. Their bedroom door was ajar, the bed neatly made. And there, on his pillow, was a folded piece of paper. His fingers hesitated, a chill creeping up his spine. Notes weren't Emily's style. She'd text or call, not leave cryptic messages. He unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words in her careful handwriting. Jared, I'm sorry. I've fallen for someone else. I want a divorce. Please don't try to reach me. The room spun. Jared sank onto the bed, the note trembling in his hand. Divorce? Someone else? The words didn't fit, like a puzzle forced together wrong. He'd seen no signs, no fights, no distance, or had he missed them? His mind raced back to her late nights, her evasions. Had she been lying all along? Anger flared, hot and sharp, but beneath it was a deeper ache. 3 years ago, when a failed project had left him doubting himself, Emily had stayed up with him until dawn, mapping out his comeback over coffee and scribbled notes. You're unstoppable, she'd said, her eyes fierce with belief. That Emily couldn't do this. Could she? He stood, pacing, the note crumpled in his fist. His gaze landed on her laptop, left open on the dresser, something she never did. Emily was meticulous, always logging out, shutting down. Curiosity battled his pain. If she was hiding something, maybe the answers were there. Jared sat, the screen glowing to life. His hands hovered over the keys, guilt tugging at him. This wasn't him, snooping, doubting. But the note burned in his mind, her betrayal a fresh wound. He clicked through folders, finding nothing unusual at first. Work files, photos of their trips. Then, buried in a subfolder labeled Miscellaneous, he saw it. A file named Private. His heart pounded as he opened it. Emails loaded, dozens of them between Emily and someone named Nick Carter. The subject lines were vague, update, plans, but the content hit like a punch. Flirty messages, promises to meet, and worse. Attached documents stamped with Jared's company logo, spec for projects he'd poured his soul into. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was selling his work to a competitor. The betrayal cut deeper than the note. Jared leaned back, staring at the ceiling, his world unraveling. But he wasn't broken yet. If Emily thought she could walk away with his trust, his life, his future, she was wrong. He'd find out who Nick was, what they'd planned, and why. And he'd make sure they paid. Not with anger, but with the truth. Jared King sat frozen, the glow of Emily's laptop casting shadows across his face. The note on the bed, "I've fallen for someone else. I want a divorce," was a blade in his chest, but what he'd found in her files was worse. Dozens of emails between Emily and someone named Nick Carter, a name that meant nothing to Jared, yet carried the weight of his unraveling life. Each message was a fresh cut, revealing not just an affair, but a betrayal that threatened everything he'd built. He scrolled through the emails, his breath shallow. The earliest ones, dated 6 months back, were cautious, professional. Nick posing as a client, Emily responding with polished charm. But by spring, the tone shifted. "Can't wait to see you again," Nick wrote after a business trip to Portland. Emily's reply, "You make it hard to focus on work." Jared's stomach churned. He pictured her typing these words in their home, maybe even in this room, while he was downstairs, clueless. The deeper he dug, the uglier it got. Attached to one email was a PDF schematics for Jared's latest security system, a project he'd spent 2 years perfecting. Another had budget projections for his company's next quarter, files only Emily could have accessed through his work laptop. She'd been feeding Nick and whoever he worked for, the lifeblood of Jared's career. The final blow was a bank statement buried in a zipped folder. Transfers totaling $2.3 million to an account in Emily's name, funneled through a shell company. She wasn't just cheating, she was profiting. Jared slammed the laptop shut, his hands shaking. Anger surged, but beneath it was a memory that hurt more. 2 years ago, when a botched prototype had nearly tanked his reputation, Emily had been his rock. They'd sat on the floor of their old apartment, surrounded by takeout boxes, as she sketched out a recovery plan. "You're bigger than one mistake," she'd said, her hand squeezing his. That moment had cemented his love for her. Now it felt like a lie. He stood, pacing the bedroom, the note crumpled in his pocket. Who was Nick Carter? A competitor? A con man? Jared needed answers, but his mind screamed caution. If Emily was stealing trade secrets, this wasn't just personal. It was corporate espionage. He couldn't confront her, not yet. She'd asked him not to reach out, and maybe that was a blessing. Let her think he was broken, licking his wounds. He'd used the time to figure out her game. His phone buzzed, snapping him back. A text from his colleague, "Sarah, you back? Need you at the office Monday, big pitch." Jared stared at the screen, the normalcy of it jarring. How could he face work when his life was imploding? But Sarah's message sparked an idea. She'd always been sharp, with a knack for sniffing out trouble. Maybe she could dig into Nick without raising alarms. He typed a careful reply, "Back tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? Need your take on something." Sarah's response was instant. "Sure, coffee at Pike Place 10? Jared agreed, a flicker of resolve cutting through his fog. He wasn't alone in this. Not yet. Sleep was impossible. Jared spent the night combing through more files, saving screenshots to a USB drive. By dawn, he'd found a photo tucked in an email. Emily and a man, Nick presumably, at a rooftop bar, her smile radiant, his arm around her. The man was polished, mid-30s, with a smirk Jared wanted to wipe off. Worse, the background showed a logo on a napkin. Vantage Tech, a rival firm that had been undercutting Jared's company for months. The discovery hit like a punch. Vantage wasn't just a competitor. They were ruthless, rumored to play dirty. If Nick worked for them, Emily wasn't just unfaithful. She was a pawn in a bigger scheme. But why? Money? Love? Or something darker? Jared's mind flashed to her recent tension, the way she'd snap when he asked about her day. Had Nick pressured her or was she all in? As morning light crept through the blinds, Jared's phone rang. He froze, half expecting Emily's name, but it was an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. A man's voice, low and clipped, spoke. "Back off, King. You don't know what you're messing with." The line went dead before Jared could respond. His heart raced. How did they know he was digging? Had Emily tipped Nick off? Or was his search last night, on her laptop, tracked? Jared checked the device, his fingers flying over the keys. A hidden tracking app blinked in the background, logging every click. He cursed himself for being careless. Whoever was watching knew he'd seen the emails. Panic clawed at him, but Jared forced it down. He yanked the laptop's battery, cutting its connection, and grabbed his keys. He needed to get out, clear his head before meeting Sarah. But as he stepped onto the porch, something caught his eye, a plain envelope taped to the front door. No address, no name. Inside was a single line, typed in stark black, "Stop now, or your sister pays." Jared's blood ran cold. His sister, Mia, lived across town, blissfully unaware of his chaos. The threat felt real, personal. He clutched the note, his resolve hardening. Emily and Nick thought they could bury him, but they'd miscalculated. Jared wasn't the type to fold. He'd protect Mia, expose their lies, and bring them down, legally, meticulously, and without mercy. This wasn't just about his heart anymore. It was about justice. Jared King stood on his porch, the morning mist of Seattle clinging to his jacket. The typed note in his hand, "Stop now, or your sister pays," felt heavier than paper should. His mind raced, replaying the anonymous call from last night. "Back off, King. You don't know what you're messing with." The threat to Mia, his younger sister, wasn't just a warning. It was a line crossed. Emily and her lover, Nick Carter, weren't playing games anymore. But neither was Jared. He tucked the note into his pocket, scanning the quiet street. Capitol Hill was waking up, dog walkers, joggers, the hum of distant traffic, but Jared felt exposed like eyes were on him. The tracking app he'd found on Emily's laptop explained how they knew he was digging. Every click he'd made last night, every email he'd opened, had been watched. He'd yanked the battery, but the damage was done. They were steps ahead, and Mia was in their crosshairs. First things first, he had to warn her. Jared pulled out his phone, hesitating. Calling Mia directly might tip off whoever was monitoring him. Instead, he texted her husband, Ethan, a paramedic with a level head. "Check on Mia today. Keep her close. We'll explain later." Ethan's reply came fast. "Got it. What's going on?" Jared typed, "Just trust me," and hit send. For now, that had to be enough. He headed inside, locking the door behind him. The USB drive with Emily's emails, proof of her affair and corporate espionage, was safe in his bag, but it wasn't enough. He needed someone he could trust, someone outside this mess. His coffee meeting with Sarah, his colleague, was in 2 hours at Pike Place Market. She'd always had a nose for trouble, and if anyone could dig into Nick Carter and Vantage Tech without raising flags, it was her. But doubt gnawed at him. Could he trust Sarah? Emily's betrayal had shaken his faith in everyone. He pushed the thought aside. He had no choice. Alone, he was a sitting duck. Grabbing his keys, he left for downtown, the note's words echoing, "Your sister pays." Pike Place was buzzing when Jared arrived, the air thick with the smell of coffee and fresh fish. Sarah was already at their usual spot, a corner table outside a cafe, her dark curls tucked under a beanie. She waved, but her smile faded as Jared sat down, his face tight. "You look like hell," she said, sliding him a latte. "What's up?" Jared leaned in, voice low. "I need your help, but it's complicated." He glanced around, half expecting Nick's smirk in the crowd. "Emily left me last night. Said she's with someone else." Sarah's eyes widened, but she stayed quiet, letting him continue. "I found emails on her laptop. She's been leaking my designs to a guy named Nick Carter, works for Vantage Tech. And now I'm getting threats." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Threats? Like what?" Jared hesitated, then slid the note across the table. She read it, her jaw tightening. "Jesus, Jared, this is serious. Have you called the cops?" "Not yet," he admitted. "I don't know who's watching, but I need to know who Nick is, what Vantage is planning. Can you poke around?" Discreetly, Sarah nodded, slipping the note into her pocket. "I've got contacts in tech. I'll check Vantage's recent moves, see if Nick's on their radar. But you need to be careful. Vantage plays dirty. Rumors say they've bribed execs before." She paused, studying him. "You sure Emily's in this deep? I mean, she's ambitious, but espionage?" Jared's throat tightened. "I didn't want to believe it either. But the emails, she's been paid millions, Sarah. She's not just cheating. She's selling me out." His voice cracked, and he looked away, the memory of Emily's old encouragement. "You're unstoppable," stinging like salt in a wound. Sarah reached for his hand. "I'm in. Give me a couple days. Lay low, okay?" Jared nodded, grateful but uneasy. As they parted, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't alone. That hope died by noon. Back home, Jared called his old friend Mark, a lawyer who'd handled his patent deals. If anyone could navigate this legally, it was him. But when Jared explained the emails, the threats, Mark's tone shifted, clipped and cold. "You sure you want to stir this up, Jared? Vantage has deep pockets. You could lose more than you gain. Jared froze. What are you saying? I've got proof Emily's stealing trade secrets. Mark sighed, almost impatient. Proof can disappear. People get hurt. Think it over. The call ended, leaving Jared reeling. Mark's words weren't advice. They were a warning. Had he been bought? Was he tied to Nick? Panic surged, but Jared forced it down. He couldn't trust Mark anymore, but he wasn't out of moves. On a hunch, he searched online for corporate fraud investigators in Seattle. One name stood out, Caitlin Reed, a private detective with a rep for busting white-collar scams. Her site promised discretion, results. Jared dialed her number, his pulse racing. Caitlin answered on the second ring, her voice calm but direct. Jared spilled the basics, Emily's affair, the emails, the threat to Mia, keeping Mark's betrayal vague. I need someone to dig into Vantage Tech and a guy named Nick Carter, he said. But I'm being watched. Can you help? Caitlin didn't flinch. Sounds like you're in deep. I've crossed paths with Vantage before. They're slippery. Meet me tomorrow, 8 a.m., Fremont Coffee. Bring everything you've got. Jared agreed, a spark of relief cutting through his dread. But as he hung up, his phone pinged. A new email, no sender name. The subject, you were warned. His hand shook as he opened it. A single line, Mia's next shift ends at 6. Be smart. Mia worked as a nurse at Swedish Medical. Jared checked the time. 3 p.m. 3 hours to act. He called Ethan again, urging him to pick Mia up early, no questions. Then he grabbed the USB drive and headed for his car. He didn't know Caitlin Reed, but she was his best shot now. As he drove, a new fear hit, Emily's divorce filing. If she was moving this fast, she might already be framing him. The emails had hinted at it. She called him controlling, a lie that could twist their finances in her favor. Worse, if Mark was compromised, legal help was dicey. Jared gripped the wheel, the city blurring past. He was one man against a machine, but he wasn't done. Emily and Nick thought they'd broken him. Tomorrow, he'd prove them wrong. Jared King gripped the steering wheel, Seattle's morning traffic a blur as he sped toward Fremont Coffee. The email from last night. Mia's next shift ends at 6. Be smart. Looped in his mind, a ticking clock. His sister was safe for now. Ethan had picked her up early from the hospital, but Jared knew the threats wouldn't stop. Emily and Nick Carter, backed by Vantage Tech's dirty money, were tightening their grip. But Jared had a plan, and it started with Caitlin Reed. The cafe was tucked in Fremont's quirky heart, its windows fogged from the chill. Caitlin waited at a back table, her short blonde hair catching the light, her eyes scanning Jared as he slid into the booth. The USB drive, loaded with Emily's emails, bank records, and stolen schematics, felt heavy in his pocket. You look like you haven't slept, Caitlin said, her voice steady but not unkind. I haven't, Jared admitted, sliding the drive across. This is everything. Emily's affair with Nick Carter, the secrets she sold to Vantage, the threats against my sister. He paused, the betrayal of his friend Mark still raw. I thought I had a lawyer, but he's compromised. I need to know what I'm up against. Caitlin plugged the drive into her tablet, her brow furrowing as she skimmed the files. This is bigger than I thought, she said after a moment. Vantage has been on my radar. Shady deals, offshore accounts. Nick's their front man, charming but ruthless. Emily's in deep, but she might not know how deep. She met Jared's gaze. You're sure she's calling the shots? Jared hesitated, a memory flickering. Emily's laugh during their first date, how she'd spilled coffee and blushed. Could that woman orchestrate this? She chose this, he said finally, his voice hard. The emails prove it. She's framing me for fraud in the divorce to clean me out. Caitlin nodded. Then we move fast. I've got a contact at the FBI, Agent Torres. He's been building a case on Vantage. This could tip it. She tapped her tablet. But Emily's divorce filing complicates things. If she's painting you as the bad guy, we need leverage, something undeniable. Jared's phone buzzed, an email from an unknown address. His gut twisted as he opened it. A grainy photo of Mia leaving the hospital, time-stamped yesterday. Below, a single line, last chance. He showed Caitlin, his hands unsteady. They're not bluffing. Caitlin's jaw tightened. They're desperate. That's good. It means they're scared. She typed a quick message, likely to Torres. I'll get this to the feds. You focus on the divorce. If Emily's lying, there's a trail. Check your shared accounts, cloud storage, anything she might have missed. Jared spent the day digging, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. In their shared cloud drive, buried in deleted files, he found gold. A voice memo from a month ago, Emily's voice sharp during a late-night call. "Nick, I'm scared," she said. "If Jared finds out, I'm done." Nick's reply was cold. "Stick to the plan. File the divorce. Blame him. You'll walk away rich." Emily sighed, then whispered, "I don't love him anymore, but I didn't want this." The words cut Jared deep, but they were a lifeline. She'd admitted her role, her lies. He sent the memo to Caitlin, who replied instantly. "This changes everything. Meet me at the courthouse tomorrow. 9 a.m. Torres is looping in the FBI." That night, Jared barely slept, haunted by Emily's voice. "I don't love him anymore." He wondered if she'd ever meant it, or if their life had been a stage. By morning, he was at the King County Courthouse, nerves taut. Caitlin met him outside, her expression grim but focused. "Emily's lawyer filed for half your assets, claiming you hid money," she said. "But Torres is here. Showtime." The courtroom was stark, the air heavy. Emily sat across the aisle, her face pale, eyes avoiding Jared's. Nick wasn't there. Smart, Jared thought bitterly. Her lawyer, a slick man named Hargrove, spun a tale of Jared's financial misconduct, painting him as a controlling husband who'd pushed Emily out. Jared's heart pounded, but he stayed silent, trusting Caitlin. When it was their turn, Caitlin stood, calm and lethal. "My client has evidence of Mrs. King's fraud," she said, handing the judge the USB drive and a transcript of the memo. The audio played, Emily's voice echoing, "Blame him. You'll walk away rich." Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's composure cracked, her hands gripping the table. Hargrove sputtered, but Caitlin wasn't done. "We've also provided the FBI with proof of Mrs. King's collusion with Vantage Tech, including stolen trade secrets." She nodded to Torres, who stood in the back, his presence a quiet threat. The judge's face hardened, adjourning the hearing to review the evidence. Outside, Emily approached Jared, tears in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you," she whispered. "Nick pushed me into this." Jared stepped back, his voice cold. "You chose him, Emily. You chose this." She flinched, but he turned away, Caitlin at his side. As they left, Caitlin got a call from Torres. "They've got Nick," she said, hanging up. "Rated Vantage this morning. He's facing fraud charges, maybe more." Jared exhaled, relief mixing with exhaustion. But a new email pinged on his phone, anonymous again. "You think it's over? Watch your back." Jared's blood chilled. Nick was down, Emily exposed, but someone else was out there, pulling strings. He looked at Caitlin, her eyes narrowing. "We're not done yet," she said. Jared nodded, resolve stealing him. He'd won this round, but the game wasn't over. Whoever was left, he'd face them head-on. Jared King stepped out of the King County Courthouse, the Seattle sky heavy with clouds that mirrored his mood. The anonymous email from yesterday, "You think it's over? Watch your back," lingered like a shadow, but the weight of his courtroom victory pushed it aside, if only for a moment. Emily's lies had unraveled before the judge. Her voice memo, "Blame him. You'll walk away rich," sealing her fate. Nick Carter was in cuffs. Vantage Tech's offices raided by the FBI. Jared had one, but the cost was etched in his heart. Caitlin Reed walked beside him, her phone buzzing with updates from Agent Torres. "Nick's singing," she said, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "He's naming names, execs at Vantage, even a board member. Torres says they're closing in on the big fish." She glanced at Jared, her eyes softening. "You did this, you know." That USB drive cracked their whole operation. Jared managed a half-smile, his thoughts on Emily. Her tearful plea in the courtroom, "I didn't want to hurt you," had nearly broken him, not because he believed her, but because it forced him to face the truth. The woman he'd loved was gone long before she left that note. The judge had ruled against her divorce claims, citing fraud. She'd walked away with nothing but her guilt, barred from Jared's assets, and facing her own legal battles for corporate espionage. He should have felt triumphant, but all he felt was hollow. "What about the email?" he asked Caitlin, his voice low. "If Nick's down, who's still after me?" Caitlin's jaw tightened. "Torres is tracing it. Could be a loose end, someone Nick worked with covering their tracks. We're not letting it slide." She paused, studying him. "You holding up okay?" It's a lot." Jared nodded, but his mind drifted to Mia. She and Ethan were safe, staying at a friend's place until the FBI gave the all-clear. The threat against her had been Nick's last play, Torres confirmed, but Jared wasn't taking chances. He'd spent the morning on the phone with Ethan, planning to install new security at their house. His designs, ones Emily hadn't touched. It was a small step, but it grounded him. Back at his Capitol Hill home, Jared found a letter in the mailbox, no return address. His pulse spiked, fearing another threat, but the handwriting was Emily's. He stared at it, torn. Part of him wanted to burn it unopened, to sever her from his life completely. But curiosity won. Inside, her words were raw, messy. Jared, I know you hate me, and I deserve it. Nick used me, but I let him. I was greedy, scared of losing my edge. I'm sorry for the lies, for breaking us. I hope you find peace. He read it twice, his throat tight. Sorry didn't fix betrayal, didn't erase the nights he'd spent doubting himself. He folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, not ready to forgive, but unwilling to carry her poison. Emily was her own punishment now, her career in ruins, her name tied to Vantage's collapse. Justice had found her, and Jared didn't need to add to it. The next week was a whirlwind. Torres called with news. The email had come from a low-level Vantage employee, a panicked lackey who'd fled after Nick's arrest. The FBI tracked him to Portland, his confession tying up the last thread. Vantage was done, its assets seized, its secrets spilled. Jared's company, battered by the leaks, bounced back, his designs now guarded by new encryption he'd built himself. He could have coasted on that win, but Jared wasn't wired to sit still. He poured his energy into a side project, a startup mentorship program for young engineers, kids like he'd been, full of ideas but short on chances. At a local tech incubator, he met bright minds who reminded him why he'd loved his work before Emily's shadow fell. Teaching them, tweaking their prototypes, he found something he hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Caitlin became a fixture in his life, not as a partner, but a friend. Over coffee at Pike Place, she'd share war stories from her cases, her dry humor pulling laughs Jared didn't know he had left. You're not half bad at this justice thing, she teased one day, sipping an espresso. Ever think about going PI? Jared chuckled, shaking his head. I'll stick to circuits, less likely to get threatening emails. But her faith in him stuck, a quiet anchor. Mia, too, was his rock, dragging him to family dinners with Ethan, filling his silences with her hospital tales. Slowly, the hollow space in his chest began to heal. One evening, sorting files at home, Jared found an old photo. Him and Emily on a ferry, wind in their hair, her smile wide. He stared at it, waiting for the familiar ache. It didn't come. He wasn't that man anymore, tethered to her lies. He set the photo aside, not with anger but release. A final email came from Torres months later. Emily had taken a plea deal, community service in exchange for testimony against Vantage's board. She'd moved east, starting over. Jared deleted the message without reply. Her story was done. His was just beginning. At the incubator, a kid named Leo pitched a security app, flawed but bold. Jared stayed late, sketching fixes with him, their voices echoing in the empty space. Outside, Seattle's lights blinked on, a city moving forward. So was he. Not to a perfect life, but one he'd earned, built on truth and second chances.